As the specter of a renewed trade war looms, the global economic landscape teeters on the brink of uncertainty following the recent imposition of tariffs by the United States. Former President Donald Trump's decision to levy an additional 10% tariff on all Chinese goods has ignited a series of responses from Beijing, where leaders are keenly aware of the delicate balance between economic retaliation and the desire for diplomatic stability. This latest chapter in U.S.-China relations highlights not only the complexities of international trade but also the shifting dynamics of global power in a post-pandemic world. In the immediate aftermath of Trump's tariff announcement, which took effect just as Chinese families were celebrating the Lunar New Year, Beijing's response was notably restrained. Rather than engaging in a tit-for-tat escalation, the Chinese government opted to announce retaliatory tariffs of 10 to 15% on select U.S. imports, including coal, crude oil, and large vehicles, set to commence on February 10. This measured approach suggests that while China remains frustrated with the United States, it is also keen to avoid exacerbating tensions that could spiral beyond control. There are no winners in a trade war, a sentiment echoed by Chinese officials underscores the shared concern that a prolonged confrontation could harm both economies. Experts suggest that the backdrop to this cautious response lies in China's changing economic landscape. With a diversification of trade partnerships across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, the Chinese economy has become less reliant on the United States than it was in 2020. As Chongjia Ian from Carnegie China observes, the leverage gained by Trump's tariffs may not be as impactful as he hopes, given China's expansive trading relationships worldwide. These developments could offer Beijing a strategic advantage as it seeks to project stability and reliability in a period when the U.S. appears increasingly unpredictable. President Xi Jinping stands to gain from the turmoil in U.S. politics, particularly as Trump's America First policies sow discord among traditional allies. With Trump threatening to impose tariffs on the European Union and other partners, there is a palpable sense of unease in international circles about America's commitment to global cooperation. Yoon Sun, director of the China program at the Stimson Center, noted that a deterioration of U.S. leadership and credibility will benefit China. As the world watches, China is positioning itself as a stable alternative aiming to enhance its global standing while the U.S. grapples with internal divisions. In addition to the immediate economic implications, the geopolitical landscape is shifting. Countries in the Asia-Pacific region such as Japan, South Korea, and Australia are increasingly wary of both U.S. unpredictability and Chinese assertiveness. This has prompted moves towards new trilateral alliances that could reshape the balance of power. As tensions simmer over issues like Taiwan and the South China Sea, these nations find themselves in a precarious position, seeking to navigate a complex web of relationships with both superpowers. Meanwhile, as Trump's administration grapples with its foreign aid strategy, freezing assistance to countries and organizations that have historically relied on U.S. support, China is poised to fill the void. The recent history of China stepping in when the U.S. withdrew funding from the World Health Organization during the pandemic exemplifies Beijing's opportunism and leveraging its economic clout for diplomatic gain. John Delury, a historian at Yonsei University, underscores that this withdrawal sends a clear message that the U.S. is retreating from its role as a global leader, potentially paving the way for a new order where China plays a more prominent role. As the two nations brace for President Trump and President Xi Jinping's expected talks this week, the stakes are undeniably high. Trump's unpredictability and the hawkish sentiments within his administration could lead to significant shocks in U.S.-China relations, warns Wu Xinbo from Fudan University. While China is undoubtedly concerned about the ramifications of a trade war on its slowing economy, it is also keen to leverage the current political climate to enhance its influence on the global stage. With both countries at a crossroads, the coming months will be pivotal in determining not only the trajectory of U.S.-China trade relations but also the broader implications for global governance and economic cooperation. The international community watches closely as the balance of power shifts, with significant ramifications for how nations align themselves in the face of an evolving geopolitical landscape. As uncertainty reigns, the question remains: How will the world's two largest economies navigate this complex terrain, and what will it mean for global stability in the years to come? In the tumultuous landscape of international trade, the relationship between the United States and China remains a focal point of tension and opportunity. As President Donald Trump reintroduces tariffs on Chinese goods, China is poised to respond not only with retaliatory tariffs but also by leveraging its position as a critical global player. This unfolding drama could reshape economic alliances and influence global stability in the coming years. On February 4, 2025, just as Trump's new 10% tariffs on all Chinese imports came into effect, China announced its countermeasures, retaliatory tariffs ranging from 10% to 15% on a variety of U.S. products including coal, crude oil, and large engine vehicles. This strategic response highlights Beijing's intent to maintain a calculated approach aiming to mitigate the impact of a trade war that could spiral out of control. Analysts suggest that China is better prepared this time around, having diversified its economic partnerships across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, thus reducing reliance on the U.S. market. John Gong, a professor at the University of International Business and Economics in Beijing, characterized China's response as measured and reflective of its desire to avoid escalation. They see this example from Canada and Mexico, and probably they are hoping for the same thing, he noted, referring to Trump's recent 30-day pause on tariffs affecting those countries amid negotiations over border security. This context underscores both nations' recognition of the potential damage a full-blown trade confrontation could inflict on their economies. President Xi Jinping, meanwhile, may perceive this period of uncertainty as an opportunity to assert China's influence on the global stage. While Trump's America First policy threatens to alienate U.S. allies, Xi's administration is keen on positioning China as a stable and attractive trade partner. Trump's unpredictability, his impulsiveness, and recklessness will inevitably lead to significant shocks in the bilateral relationship, said Wu Xinbo, a professor at Fudan University, suggesting a challenging landscape ahead for U.S.-China relations. In addition to the tariffs, China has launched an antitrust investigation into Google, a move that may be seen as part of its broader strategy to protect domestic companies and assert regulatory control over foreign tech giants. This investigation could complicate Google's already limited operations in China, where its search engine remains blocked. The timing of the investigation, announced concurrently with the tariffs, suggests a deliberate effort by Beijing to exert pressure on U.S. firms operating within its borders. Moreover, China has introduced export controls on critical minerals essential for high-tech production, further illustrating its capacity to leverage its economic might. The U.S. is particularly vulnerable in this area as it depends on Chinese supplies for several critical minerals including gallium and germanium. Philip Luck, an economist at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, noted that these controls could harm the U.S. economy significantly. As both nations navigate these turbulent waters, the potential for new alliances emerges. Countries in the Asia-Pacific region, wary of both U.S. unpredictability and Chinese assertiveness, may seek to forge stronger ties among themselves. This pivot could lead to trilateral collaborations, particularly among Australia, Japan, and South Korea, as they grapple with shared concerns over China's regional ambitions. The current trade tensions arrive at a particularly sensitive moment, coinciding with China's New Year celebrations, a time traditionally associated with family gatherings and optimism. Yet the political climate suggests that when officials return from the holiday, they will face a pressing need to re-evaluate their strategy in light of the recent tariff escalations and the broader implications for global trade dynamics. As the world watches and waits, the future of U.S.-China relations hangs in the balance. The next steps taken by both leaders will be crucial not only for their respective economies but also for the stability of international trade systems. With Trump's unpredictability and Xi's ambition for a more prominent global role, the coming months could mark a significant turning point in how these two superpowers engage with each other and the world. The potential for collaboration remains, but so does the risk of deepening divisions that could reverberate throughout the global economy. In a new chapter of the ongoing trade tensions between the United States and China, recent developments have placed both nations at a crossroads. As President Donald Trump reintroduces tariffs on Chinese goods, the Chinese government has responded with a mixture of calculated restraint and assertive countermeasures. This latest round of economic hostilities reflects not only the shifting dynamics between the two largest economies but also highlights the broader implications for global trade and international relations. On February 4, 2025, Trump implemented a 10% tariff on all Chinese imports, a move intended to pressure Beijing into addressing the trade imbalance and curbing the export of fentanyl to the United States. In a swift retaliation, China announced additional tariffs on U.S. products including coal, crude oil and large vehicles, as well as an antitrust investigation into Google, which, while largely symbolic, signals a strong stance against U.S. economic actions. The combination of tariffs on major trade partners and the freezing of foreign assistance sends a message that the U.S. is not interested in international partnership, noted John Delury, a historian of modern China. The backdrop to these trade skirmishes is a global landscape that has changed significantly since Trump's first term. Beijing has diversified its trade relationships, reducing its dependency on the U.S. by strengthening ties with countries across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia. Today, China stands as the largest trading partner for more than 120 nations, giving it a leverage that it did not possess in 2020. China's economy is not as reliant on the U.S. as it was before, said Chong Jia-Ian from Carnegie China, indicating that this shift may affect the efficacy of Trump's tariffs. This evolving economic relationship comes as both nations grapple with internal pressures. The Chinese economy is currently facing a slowdown, a concern amplified by the prospect of a protracted trade war. Analysts suggest that while retaliatory measures may serve as a warning to the Trump administration, they are cautious about escalating the conflict into a full-blown tariff war. A full-blown tariff war is not in China's interest, commented Larry Hu, head of China economics at Macquarie Group Limited. Instead, China is likely to respond to tariffs mainly through domestic stimulus. Moreover, while the Trump administration's tariffs are poised to disrupt global supply chains, they also serve as a catalyst for other nations to reassess their alliances. Countries in the Asia-Pacific region, including Japan, South Korea, and Australia, are beginning to strengthen their ties in response to both Chinese assertiveness and American unpredictability. The gathering momentum for a trilateral relationship among Australia, Japan, and South Korea is motivated by the impact of a second Trump administration, noted observers from the Australian Institute of International Affairs. As both leaders navigate this treacherous terrain, the potential for dialogue remains a flicker of hope amidst rising tensions. Trump has signaled a willingness to engage with Xi Jinping, suggesting that discussions could take place in the coming days. However, the effectiveness of these talks remains uncertain as both sides grapple with domestic political pressures and global economic realities. Looking ahead, the future of U.S.-China relations appears fraught with challenges but also ripe with opportunities. China is keen on positioning itself as a more stable global trade partner, especially as the U.S. retreats from multilateral agreements. Xi Jinping's vision for China to lead a new world order may find fertile ground as other nations re-evaluate their alliances in light of America's America First doctrine. As the world watches closely, the unfolding events may not only redefine the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and China but also reshape the global economic landscape as both nations vie for influence in an increasingly multipolar world. With the stakes higher than ever, the coming months will be critical in determining whether cooperation can emerge from confrontation or if the trade war will escalate into a broader economic conflict. In a world increasingly defined by geopolitical tensions and shifting alliances, recent developments in U.S.-China relations take center stage as former President Donald Trump embarks on his second term. The stakes of this renewed rivalry are underscored by Trump's inconsistent foreign policy decisions, which some analysts argue could undermine America's standing against China. With a backdrop of escalating tariffs and a weakened commitment to allies, The future of U.S. international strategy hangs in the balance. As the global landscape shifts, the notion of a Cold War 2.0 has emerged, signifying a renewed great power rivalry reminiscent of the US-Soviet tensions of the mid-20th century. In his 2017 national security strategy, Trump characterized both China and Russia as revisionist powers intent on reshaping the world to counter US values and interests. However, critics, including political analysts like Michael McFaul, contend that Trump's recent actions contradict this assessment and may even diminish America's ability to effectively counter China's growing influence. One of the most pressing concerns is Trump's approach towards U.S. allies. Historically, a robust alliance network has been a crucial asset in countering adversaries during the original Cold War. Yet Trump's recent engagements have created rifts with key partners such as Canada and Denmark, raising alarm bells among foreign policy experts. His decision to impose tariffs on Canadian goods without clear justification and his controversial comments regarding Greenland have only exacerbated tensions. Weakening ties with our allies only helps China and Russia, McFaul emphasizes, underlining the importance of a united front in this new era of competition. Moreover, Trump's foreign policy seems increasingly transactional, prioritizing short-term gain over long-term strategic partnerships. His administration's treatment of developing nations has drawn criticism, particularly as he threatens to cut foreign aid and support for programs like USAID, which have traditionally bolstered U.S. influence abroad. In stark contrast, China continues to engage in foreign assistance, offering aid and investment to countries that the U.S. seems to be neglecting. This shift in dynamics presents significant opportunities for the Chinese government to expand its reach and influence. The economic implications of this rivalry are further compounded by trade tensions. Following Trump's recent announcement of tariffs, China has unveiled its own retaliatory measures, intensifying the cycle of trade disputes. As both powers engage in this tit-for-tat economic warfare, the potential for a broader economic fallout looms large, affecting not only the bilateral relationship but also global markets. While military strength has historically been a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy, experts argue that a modern approach must also focus on technological advancement and strategic deployments. McFaul suggests that the U.S. must prioritize military readiness in Asia and enhance its integration of artificial intelligence within defense strategies. He warns against diverting resources towards projects like a proposed Iron Dome for the U.S., arguing that such initiatives may not address the immediate threats posed by adversaries in the Pacific. As the Biden administration and its successors navigate these complex geopolitical waters, the ideological battle also comes into play. The U.S. has historically leveraged its democratic ideals as a counterpoint to authoritarian regimes. Yet critics note that Trump's administration shows little interest in promoting democracy abroad, potentially emboldening autocratic leaders in nations like China and Russia. This ideological vacuum could further tilt the balance of global power. In summary, as Trump enters the early weeks of his second term, the ramifications of his foreign policy decisions are becoming increasingly evident. The potential for a renewed Cold War with China hinges not only on military might but also on coalition-building economic strategy and the promotion of democratic ideals. With the geopolitical landscape rapidly evolving, the U.S. must recalibrate its approach to ensure that it remains a competitive force on the global stage. As the narrative unfolds, the question remains: will the U.S. learn from past mistakes and forge a coherent strategy to engage with rising powers, or will it continue to flounder in the face of a formidable adversary? The coming months will be critical in determining the trajectory of this new era of great power competition. As the first week of February 2025 unfolds, the geopolitical landscape between the United States and China is once again marked by escalating tensions, signaling a potential return to the trade war that characterized much of the previous decade. Following U.S. President Donald Trump's implementation of a 10% tariff on Chinese goods, Beijing has retaliated with a series of measures designed to protect its economic interests and assert its position on the global stage. Effective February 10, China will impose punitive tariffs of 10% to 15% on select American products, a move that underscores the depth of animosity between the two economic superpowers. Furthermore, China has initiated export controls on critical minerals and launched an anti-monopoly investigation targeting Google, a reflection of its growing concerns over foreign influence and competition in its domestic market. Analysts warn that these developments could inflict significant harm on e-commerce businesses which have thrived amid the digital transformation of global trade. The backdrop to this renewed confrontation is Trump's return to the presidency, where he has pledged to pursue a more aggressive economic approach towards China. Observers note that while the tariffs aim to bolster domestic manufacturing and reduce dependency on Chinese imports, they could inadvertently lead to higher prices for American consumers and further strain U.S.-China relations. The stakes are higher than ever, said Rohan Rashid, a geopolitical analyst. Trump's administration is likely to employ a blend of protectionist measures that could decimate not only Chinese economic growth but also reshape global supply chains. In parallel to these economic maneuvers, China is hosting leaders from 4 neighboring Asian countries, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Brunei and Thailand, demonstrating its commitment to regional diplomacy and economic cooperation. This initiative coincides with the Year of the Snake, emphasizing China's efforts to advance its diplomatic agenda while addressing common challenges such as online fraud and environmental concerns. The visits are seen as strategic, aiming to consolidate China's influence in Central Asia and reinforce ties with Southeast Asian nations amidst the backdrop of increasing tensions with the United States. Kyrgyzstan's President Sadir Japarov has articulated a desire for deeper cooperation with China, particularly in sectors like agriculture and energy, stating that Chinese modernization presents new opportunities for our region. Similarly, Thailand's Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra is expected to address issues surrounding safety and tourism, reflecting concerns that recent criminal activities targeting Chinese nationals have dampened travel enthusiasm. The dual narratives of confrontation and cooperation highlight the complexities facing both nations as they navigate their respective strategies. While Trump's administration may lean towards economic disengagement, the historical ties and mutual interests between the U.S. and China could still provide avenues for selective engagement on global challenges like health crises and climate change. As the world watches these developments, the implications of this renewed trade war and diplomatic engagement will extend far beyond U.S.-China relations. The potential for shifts in global economic dynamics, particularly in Asia, could reshape the foundations of international trade and cooperation. The unfolding scenarios suggest that while immediate tensions may dominate headlines, the longer-term trajectory will hinge on each nation's ability to adapt to a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape. Looking forward, the next steps taken by both Trump and Chinese leadership will be critical in determining whether the coming months will see a further entrenchment of hostilities or a strategic recalibration that could allow for more constructive engagement. The interplay between economic policies, regional diplomacy, and global challenges will likely define the future of U.S.-China relations in an increasingly interconnected world.